so we will get our program started today. Happy Friday to everybody. Thank you for bearing with us yesterday with our power outage. We still had dinner as planned and a wonderful artist reception, I heard. So kudos to Michelle for your hard work with that. We had over 100 people here, so wonderful job and show went on. I would like to start with our MVP of the month. I would like to bring up Gina Kinsman. She works in our therapy department, and if anyone has gone for outpatient therapy through Fox Run or had a stay in skilled, you've probably met Gina or seen her around. She was nominated by her supervisor, Tracy, and Tracy wrote, "Gina continues to go above and beyond for all Fox Run residents through all levels of care, independent, assisted, skilled, on a daily basis. She is seen as the go-to for our outpatients when a resident will call to ask questions or schedule. Gina has made a point to coordinate outpatient appointments with our wellness office, whether it be for transportation, to discuss equipment, or to communicate a resident's current status. Gina ensures there is a seamless care and communication, ultimately providing a positive impact on all that she assists. Gina has also taken an active role in learning regulation and requirements in all of SNF. Additionally, the number of patients Gina administers treatments to has steadily and consistently increased. She has done so without question or complaint, never compromising her quality of care delivery. Gina is always steady in her emotions and a true team player. She has learned the art of balancing both inpatients and outpatients." We're very lucky to have Gina on staff here. Can everyone give her a round of applause? Thank you, Gina.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your MVP. Just a couple announcements that I had. We are looking for a few more. If anyone's interested in attending the BPO next Friday, we will depart here from the Commons at 9 a.m. The show is Stravinsky and Ravel. We have about 4 signed up, and we are looking for more, so if that show interests you, please see Jackie or Rowan to sign up for that show. Our pancake breakfast, it's an annual event that we have here. I know we have a lot of new community members. That is going to be Wednesday, March 26th at 8 a.m. in the bistro. So that's open for employees and community members. It's $8, and all the proceeds will benefit the Alzheimer's Association. The $8 includes your coffee, your orange juice, eggs, sausage, and all-you-can-eat pancakes. So please come down and support this foundation. You will see a flyer around campus. Unfortunately, Ashley Montan is no longer with us. Rowan is graciously going to step in for the Wednesday evening programs. So all those will remain as planned. But the Thursday night game nights will be canceled until we can get somebody else hired. So her position's posted. We wish Ashley well. She works full time in another job, so she really has to focus her time and attention on that. But just so everyone's aware, the Thursday game nights will be canceled going forward until we get some more help hired. And my last announcement, some of you might have heard who attend Catholic Mass on Saturdays, but we do have some exciting news starting in May. We're going to do away with the live stream on Saturdays, and we're going to have some local deacons coming in May. So we're not sure the date yet, but that will be a rotation. So they will be here in person, 4:30. So we're really excited to have that. You know, that some of them, if any of you came down for Ash Wednesday, on Wednesday you might have met Deacon John, and he was from St. Peter and Paul. He's going to be one of those that comes and does Mass here. So it'll be great to have in-person Thursday and in-person Saturday. So we're very lucky for that. Do I have any resident announcements? Nancy.
I just want to say what a great job the dining room did last night with our dinner with only an hour's notice and no electricity. It went very well.
If anyone didn't hear that, I'm going to repeat it for the live stream because this is tied in. Nancy just said, great job to dining services. With the power outage, only having an hour notice, they made it work. We're grateful for that. And I would like to bring up Wendy Bachman, who is our Executive Director for Senior Wishes, to talk about the Sip Suds and Sweets event that's going to be happening here in just a month.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So I'm Wendy. You see me running around here sometimes. I'm the executive director of the United Church Home Society, which founded Fox Run. And I run a program called Senior Wishes. And Senior Wishes started back in 2013. Michael Maloney and I got together to think about what programs were needed in the community. And Senior Wishes is a wish-granting program for lower-income seniors to provide them with an experience or possibly travel to visit a loved one that they would like to do again but aren't able to do on their own. And then we've expanded into a big veterans recognition program every November where we recognize at least 150 veterans. And we have a holiday giving program where we usually bring gift bags with pajamas and puzzle books and stuffed animals to about 250 seniors in a 5-county area. So it's really grown. And we have a lot of other programming through the year. So every year we have our annual fundraiser called Sip, Suds, and Sweets, and it is here in your homes, in the Commons area. So I just want to give you a heads up of what's going to be happening. The date is April 3rd, so it's 4 weeks from yesterday is the event. It's 6 to 9 p.m. This is a ticketed event. It's open to the public. The tickets right now are $65 for 2 more weeks, and then in 2 weeks it goes up to $75. So Pamela is selling tickets at the front desk. They're already there. You can start today, get them. And if you want to invite any family members to come as well, you can buy their tickets at the front desk. It's also available online at our website, which is seniorwishes.org, if you're talking to anybody off-site that might want to get a ticket. So what the event is, for those of you that haven't been, is there's 25 vendors here, local restaurants, bakeries, wineries, breweries, and as you check in, you get a glass, and then you walk around and you sip and sample the food items and the drink items. We have live music this year by Brother James, which I think he was at your Christmas party this year. Was he at your Christmas? Okay, so you're familiar with him, some of you. He'll be our live music this year. And the event also features a silent auction, which is in this room, basket raffle, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute, a gift card tree. We have a new raffle this year called Sweet Destinations. We have Fowler's candy bars for sale, and one person will win a $500 travel gift card. So that's something new that we have this year. And then we also have a Yeti cooler on wheels, filled with all kinds of spirits to stock the bar, and that's also another piece of what the event has. So, if you cannot attend the event, or don't want to attend the event, there are still ways that you can support us. The basket raffle will begin Thursday. So on Thursday, you will see 7 or 8 tables, starting by Pamela's desk and going down the hallway where the mailboxes are. We have about 80 baskets this year. They're still coming in. They're fantastic baskets this year. They're just fantastic. The tickets will be for sale at Pamela's desk from now until the event. So next Thursday, look for the baskets to go out. The winners are chosen at the event, but you don't need to be at the event to win your basket. We'll find you, okay? The other way you can support it is the Yeti cooler. Tickets are for sale. They're $10 a piece, 3 for $25. It's like an $800 value, and I'll be selling them before the event. If anybody wants them, you can get a hold of me. The candy bars are going to be pre-sale as well. And then for anybody that can't make it to the event, especially any of your family or friends, our auction, our silent auction, is virtual, which means it's online. So we had several people win last year that weren't at the event. And it really helps get the bids going up higher when you have people, at the event and then not at the event bidding. So anybody that can't attend can also register for the virtual auction, for the silent auction. And I'm just going to give you some idea of some of the items we have. We have 2 Bills tickets in the lower bowl for our next year, which is going to be the last year at the Ralph. And it's a game of your choice. So as long as the Bills have seats that they can find for you, it's game of your choice. You coordinate it with the Bills directly. That's a fantastic, fantastic item. We have, if you're a tennis player or like tennis, we have 2 tickets for 2 sessions in club seats at the Cincinnati Open, which is in August. It's the quarterfinals day and evening session. So that's a really high-end item. We have a couple of overnights in Ellicottville, Chautauqua, we have Buffalo, we have Batavia, I think there's another one. We have a lot of museum packages, we have a 50-inch TV, we have a lot of jewelry, there's a lot of items, a lot of new items. So, that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
How do you keep track?
Good. I have other people helping me with all that.
I'm sure. That's great.
You should see our office.
Oh, I can.
You can't see our desks. So we're excited to get those baskets out because it clears some space for us for the silent auction items. So just look for that next week. If you have any questions, we're all, my committee and I will all be running around. You can ask us, and Pamela has all the information at the front too. So remember, the price of the ticket's $65, and in 2 weeks, it's $65 for 2 more weeks, then it goes to $75. So if you're interested, get your tickets now. Okay? Thank you. I have these little postcards. These postcards, I just put some, if any of you want to just pick one up to remember what it is and like talk to your loved one or family member, I put some on the food table back there, so if you want to grab one, it has the QR code to register. It also talks a little bit about the event.
Thank you so much, Wendy. If anyone's ever attended, it really is a wonderful event, very well done. We've had it Fox Run for years. It's a very, very special cause. With that, I would like to introduce our speaker today, my colleague, Allie Olson. And I want to especially thank Allie today because her and her team have gone through, they still are going through the Department of Health survey they entered on Monday. So this has been a little bit of a week for Allie and her staff. So I appreciate you presenting today, and give her a round of applause.
Thank you, and yes, so if I seem a little more scatterbrained than usual, that is why. I do also have to have my cell phone out in case I am needed next door, which DOH can decide that at any time. So good morning, everybody. I'm very excited about what Allison is letting me discuss with you all today. I'm going to be discussing autism spectrum disorder. Now, just so I can get an idea in the room, who knows or has heard of autism spectrum disorder before? Okay, good. Sometimes there's people and there's some people that don't know, and that's okay. This is why I'm here, and I'm so thrilled to talk to you about it. So for people that know what it is, can you raise your hand if you know or have a loved one or a friend who is on the spectrum? Okay, does everyone see those hands raised? Can you keep those hands raised for me if you know somebody? Okay, can you please leave them up if they're over 30 years old? Can you rate, so did you see kind of how there was a lot of hands that went down? And we'll get into why in a little bit, but this is still something that's, still newly talked about in our society, and I'm thrilled to be here today. All right, so we're going to be defining autism spectrum disorder, talking about the prevalence and lifespan of someone who is neurodivergent. We're going to acknowledge that there are some similarities between dementia and autism spectrum disorder, as well as what we can do in our communities within long-term care to prepare to care for these individuals that are on the spectrum. Okay, so this is probably my favorite slide. This is my son, Emmett. Emmett is 4 years old. If you couldn't tell that's my son, we have the same face almost. He is 4 years old, and a couple of years ago, he was diagnosed with a moderate intellectual disability. He is nonverbal, but trust me, he gets his needs known. He's a very sweet boy. For those of you that have seen him around campus, he was the little baby that was in my belly when I first started here. And so he was diagnosed with that a couple of years ago, and they said at the time they didn't want to diagnose him on the spectrum yet because they wanted to wait until he got a little older. We're actually on the waiting list now for him to be evaluated later this summer. So he really inspired me to do this presentation because as a mother of a child with special needs, one day I had the thought that mothers have, who's going to take care of my son if he needs it when I no longer can, or I no longer am here. So this really started as a personal journey for me, and it started to make me think about where I work in our communities. And, you know, I got an idea for this presentation. So he is why, ultimately, I am here today. All right, so autism spectrum disorder. It refers to a broad range of conditions that are characterized by perhaps challenges with social skills, repetitive behaviors, speech, and nonverbal communication. Every single person with autism differs and is unique in their own way. That's why the quote is up there: if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism. Everyone's unique, just like all of us. So other traits that they may have include difficulty processing different stimuli, sometimes having intense specialized interests, and some individuals on the spectrum have high support needs, and there's some people that really don't need a lot of help, and that's okay. So how autism is diagnosed and the different levels has really changed over the last couple of years. You might, remember there used to be terms such as Asperger's, but right now when you are diagnosed being on the spectrum, you are either given one of 3 levels: level 1, level 2, level 3. And those levels are really depending on the services that you need. Level 1 requiring the least amount of support, and level 3 requiring substantial support with someone's everyday needs. So for example, with level 1, without supports in place, there's deficits in social communication, difficulty, initiating social interactions perhaps. And then when you get to level 3, it's when someone has a really hard time in their day-to-day life because they have a hard time differing from routine. They have repetitive behaviors. They have very limited social interactions, nonverbal. It's hard for them to make eye contact. So with autism, and I know there's been a lot of discussion politically and in our current climate about causes of autism, and everyone wants to know why. And I'm just here to say that when I research it and when I advocate for my son, I will always stick to the science. And right now it's telling us that the brain matters, and this is something that has been around for a very long time. So autism is a developmental disorder caused by differences in the brain. These differences include increased gray matter and structural differences. So when I first did this presentation, it was in November of 24, so I have to change this slide. So in October of 24, researchers published for the first time that the brains of autistic adults had fewer synapses compared to the brains of people who are neurotypical. These synapses in the brain are very important. They are points of connection where nerve cells send signals to other cells. Furthermore, researchers found that the fewer synapses a person had, the more autistic features they were likely to have. This research has been pivotal in disproving decades-long rhetoric that autism is caused by environmental factors such as varying medications, diet, or even vaccines. All right, so this is a lot, and what I can do, because I know there's a lot of information here, if anyone after the presentation would like me to send this to them so you have it for your personal use, just let me know. But this is just a brief history timeline of autism spectrum disorder. So back in 1911, there was a Swiss doctor named Paul Eugene Bleuler that created the formal diagnosis. And back then, it was actually viewed as a childhood version of schizophrenia when they weren't sure what these behaviors were or what autism was. It wasn't until 1952 where there was the first manual where children with autistic traits were labeled as having childhood schizophrenia. And then further on in 1980, that was when the DSM-3 included criteria to actually diagnose autism. In 1990, autism was finally included as a disability category. In 2006, President Bush signed the Combating Autism Act, which is later expanded in 2014 and passed again in 2024, which pushes to continue funding for research and treatment of autism. Okay, so why is this happening? Approximately 1 in 100 children are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder around the world. So this is not something that is just in the United States. This is because of raised awareness, increased acceptance, as well as many improvements in the advanced screening and early detection of autism. So back in 2000, the current rates were 1 in 150 children. Today, it is 1 in 36. So the CDC has estimated over 5 million individuals aged 18 or older have autism, so approximately 2% of adults. When we discuss or hear about autism, rarely does it involve older adults, let alone elderly population. In fact, only 1 to 2% of the total funding for autism is geared towards adults. And when I say adults, I mean people aged 18 to below 50. When I try to research autism, when it talks about the geriatric and senior population, there is nothing. Remember, awareness and prevalence of autism really has only risen within the last 30 to 40 years, which is why research is key to education, creating new legislation, and providing services. In a study of what research and publications were available, there was a study that found while there was a sharp increase in the number of autism-related publications since 2010, older age research only accounts for 0.4% for any new publications regarding autism since 2012. All right, so before 1980, there was not a clear definition or a diagnosis for certain behaviors, and it was assumed that with individuals with autism born before 1980, they may be misdiagnosed or perhaps even misdiagnosed. Available research is finding that many who actually do receive a late-life diagnosis are already being treated for social problems, anxiety, or even mood disorders. While autistic older adults have similar characteristics shared with autism, they are also at an extreme risk of developing co-occurring physical health conditions. Autism itself does not affect oh my gosh, why can't I say that word? The lifespan. But the co-occurring medical conditions, as well as unfortunately drowning and other accidents, leads to the mortality risk to be twice as high as the general population. So someone with autism, they have a mortality rate that's twice as high than other individuals. And also, do you know the leading cause of death in autistic children? Anybody? Unfortunately, it is drowning. So autistic children are 160 times more likely to die from accidental drowning compared to the general pediatric population. So things that contribute to this is, individuals with autism sometimes have a lack of safety awareness. They don't realize the dangers of going to the pool without an adult. They see a body of water and they get excited. I know my son, when he sees water, he's gone unless I'm right there with him. He has a certain fondness right now of turning on all the fountains in our house, and all the sinks and the tubs, and we'll run around until all of them are on. And they just love the feel of it. And when you think of water, and when you experience water, when you're in the water, you're really getting all 5 senses and getting that sensory input all at once. You're getting the feel of it, you can smell it, the way it feels on your body, the sounds that water makes. It kind of hints someone's all sensory all at once, so it makes sense why individuals with autism have that likeness to water and want to be around it. All right, so health problems that we're used to hearing about when we're talking about the elderly, they unfortunately are significantly more common among older autistic adults. Things like cognitive disorder, heart disease, osteoporosis. Neurodivergent individuals are also at a significantly greater risk of developing other conditions such as GI issues, hypertension, obesity, and even sleep disorders. So while there is not a lot of research of what autism looks like in seniors, professionals have pointed out some things that clinicians can look for if someone is suspected on being on the spectrum in their later years. A long-standing difficulty with social interactions, trouble understanding certain social cues, so sometimes these individuals might be seen as rude or aloof, not wanting to pay attention. Potentially issues with coping with transitions or unexpected changes in their routine. Increased or decreased sensitivity to different stimuli such as lights, taste, textures, or even smells. And obsession with specific interests. Okay, so what is stimming? For those that are familiar with autism, have you heard of stimming before? Okay, so this is why we're here. This is great. All right, stimming are self-stimulating behaviors that are often ways of self-regulating or dealing with an intense emotion. This occurs when a person repeatedly makes the same movement or sound. So I'll kind of do an example here. So sometimes if you see an individual with autism, when they get really, really excited or they're upset, they'll hand flip and it'll look like this. And you'll notice that children do that when they're young. This is common, but that's something that sticks with them. And it's almost kind of like, it's a positive thing. It's a way for them to get out their energy in a healthy way. There's also vocal stimming, which I believe my son has, where they'll make different sounds when they're excited and they're happy. So different things like that can be seen as stimming. Also, why does someone stim? Like I said, to regulate emotion, to show excitement or happiness, to show they're enjoying something. They also can be used for them to try to process a negative emotion that they're experiencing that they can't verbalize. So humming is also an example of a stim. Repeated words or sounds, repeated sniffing or licking, hand flapping, skin rubbing, so someone that wants skin-to-skin contact. Eye tracking, which an example of eye tracking is when you'll see someone kind of looking straight on and then they'll kind of turn their head and they'll want to keep looking at you and then they'll turn their head the other way. Also, lining up objects, rocking, spinning, or pacing can also be a stim. So while stimming is widely known as a trait of autism in children and adolescents, little to no research has been done on what stimming may look like for adults and the elderly population. A survey conducted in 2021 interviewed adults with autism or suspected autism for them to describe what stimming means to them. These adults have described stimming as a way to calm themselves, experiencing pleasure or positive emotions, as well as a way to deal with negative emotions, whether it's, an excess of energy, boredom, or feeling sensory overload. Perhaps they're in a very busy place where they're seeing a lot of lights, they're hearing a lot of noises, there's people walking around that they don't recognize. Participants also reported that while stimming had a positive effect on their well-being, at times they felt a social pressure or a stigma against it. 72% reported that at some point in their life, they had been told to not stim, to not act like that, that's not normal, which in turn had negative effects on their overall mental health. And one individual was actually quoted, when they were told to not stim, "It feels like holding back something you need to say." So with the increase in screening and evaluation practices for autism within infant stages and early childhood, which is how we got my son's services so early, obtaining a diagnosis for autism is not as difficult today as it used to be. For our aging population, it becomes much more challenging. So sometimes this condition is happening and it's been gone undiagnosed for years. People may have learned different masking techniques, or their symptoms of autism may overlap with other conditions, such as Alzheimer's or even depression. Much like with the early life stage evaluations, doctors would need to meet with seniors over time and use a combination of assessments and evaluations designed to assess someone's social skills and the onset of their behaviors. Is this something new, or was this person in their younger years always a different way? So prior to 1980, most neurodivergent individuals were likely to be misdiagnosed with a psychiatric disorder. In the early 20th century, before autism was recognized, many of its features were thought to mimic schizophrenia in children and adults alike. In a study in 2012, David Mandel surveyed a state psychiatric hospital and reviewed 141 patients. Through different reviews, chart reviews, meetings, 10% of that sample were previously misdiagnosed and they actually were on the spectrum. More than other patients, their onset was prior to 12 years of age. They were more likely to have gait problems and an intellectual disability. This study rose awareness around the fact that undiagnosed autism may be common in psychiatric hospitals, and it's led researchers to begin to look at the similarities between other potential misdiagnoses, and this includes dementia. Okay, so autism, a complex spectrum disorder characterized by unique brain development that impacts communication and social interaction. Onset is developmentally in early childhood and remains a lifelong condition. Dementia, this is a progressive neurological decline that affects our cognitive abilities as we age. It affects essential functions such as logic, memory, language, and communication. Both autism and dementia share common symptoms, including communication issues, behavioral changes, memory problems, and language impairments. So, some similarities between the two. Both have wandering and elopement as something that's common. In autism, there are individuals where someone that's called a runner is just an individual who always wants to get away from everybody. They want to explore, they want to see things, they want to see what's going on. So again, it kind of brings it back to that lack of safety awareness. They don't realize that leaving mom or dad or leaving the adult means that they could potentially be in harm's way. So there's things that, adults and people in charge of them have to put into place to prevent that. With the elderly and dementia, there's also wandering and elopement where some of the similar characteristics happen. Sometimes with a person with dementia, they'll want to wander, they'll want to walk around, they feel like they don't belong where they currently are and they need to get out. Difficulty with changes in environment occur in both. That impaired social interaction, communication challenges. I see in many of my residents, in skilled nursing, when someone is in the later stages of their dementia, they turn towards nonverbal communication. So we pay attention to their facial expressions, their body language, their day-to-day routines. And this is something that is often used with autism as well. Repetitive behaviors and routines are very important with both. Both experience different sensory and processing issues, and there's executive functioning deficits. So the reason why I made this presentation, which I actually gave at a conference last year, is what does this mean for long-term care? We've seen the statistics. It went from 1 in 150 to now 1 in 36. What does that mean in 30, 40 years from now? This is something that's going to be very prevalent in our communities, and it's time, now is the time to start preparing for it. Oops, sorry, I pressed the computer and it got mad. Now is the time to start preparing for it and educating people so that we can take care of everyone the best way we possibly can.
Need help?
Yep. Okay, here we go. So some important things to consider: providing education and awareness to staff for current and future residents, learning more and seeking more research with how autism affects the aging population, recognizing signs and symptoms to better understand residents and even employees. This is something that not only in our communities are we going to experience with our residents, but also with the staff that are working here too. Think about our current census. 1 in 36 children are being diagnosed, and when it comes time for them to need higher levels of care, how does that affect someone's organization? How does that affect someone's community? Are they prepared? Can they take care of them appropriately? So when I was talking with different colleagues of mine who work in other long-term care facilities across the state, we talked about to know your level 2 PASAR referral protocol. This is something where if someone with a developmental disability, which autism is most generally linked to, there's a specialized form when they're admitted into a nursing home that they need to have. And a lot of the times, skilled nursing facilities will turn these people away because there is a lot of extra work that goes into admitting them, which is a harsh truth. I wish it wasn't true because it's very disheartening, but that is a fact. All individuals suspected of having an intellectual or developmental disability require this level 2 assessment by the OPWDD, which is the Office for Persons with Developmental Disabilities. Okay, so now was the time in my presentation with my colleagues where we had a group discussion. So, I know that's a lot of information. It was very technical, so I tried to, open it up for your understanding as much as I could. But now I'm happy to have whatever group discussion you want to have, as well as answer any questions. Yes?
Ellie, does a program like the British Swim School help children with these developmental disabilities?
So that was, Marja was asking, like our swim program that comes here, do organizations like that help individuals, with that? They may. I haven't asked because honestly, I've been scared. It's something that, and it's a lot, to put my son in a class like that right now, but I'm sure I could ask, and I'm sure there's programs that do that. I have seen it online in different areas where there will be specialized training and classes in safety for individuals who are on the spectrum. Yes.
So you said 1 in 36?
Yes.
Is on the spectrum.
Yep.
Have they done a breakdown with the spectrum? Because it's a big difference
Mhm.
if you're level 1
Mhm.
and what used to be called Asperger's or something like
Mhm.
that, and you're holding a job, and level 3,
Mhm.
where you so is it pretty much an even breakdown?
No, because someone's levels can change over time.
It can.
It depends, not everybody, but everybody's unique. So I was actually told that, and I have a friend of mine whose child was diagnosed, when she was just 2, and she's actually a little girl. And it's very less common for girls to be diagnosed. It's much more common in boys. And it's something that can change over time depending on if they learn and adapt.
Better or worse? Does it change for better or worse?
It could either or.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's why spectrum is now used, because autism is such a wide variety of different things that a person can exhibit. Yes?
What is your opinion or feeling or research in the technology where parents put small infants in front of the TV or with their cell phones to play with, and they're somehow just abandoned with the interaction? I just wondered, the synapses is certainly a concrete diagnosis, but can there be a learned type or environmental development of autism with this technology?
So the question was, in the research, has anything been shown where there's been a true environmental reason for, why people are developing autism? And that's something, I appreciate you asking that, because that's something that has come up a lot. And actually before, in the earlier years, in that timeline I showed a couple slides ago, there was a term that researchers used called refrigerator mothers. Mothers who were cold to their children, and that's why they developed autism. That has been disproven, and I think a lot more research has to be done, but from everything that I've seen and that I've experienced and that I've known, I can only go off of my experience. My son has always had something, special about him since the day he was born. He's always had, I could just see that his brain works differently than others, and that's a beautiful thing. And it's something for all of us to just learn about, and my job as his mother is to advocate for him and figure out how can I get him to learn and prosper in this world as much as I can. Now, I'm not saying that that's not a possibility where environmental factors may be, a cause. I personally, in my opinion, don't think so, just from the research and my own personal experience. But that's why I do think there's such a push now to try to research, to really try to disprove or prove that as much as possible. I hope that answered your question. Yes?
Would Tourette's be considered a STIM?
Tourette's, they're called tics, from what I know. And I'm not a medical clinician, so if I misspeak, but they are different. Yes?
Is there any information prior to vaccinations and shots? So I'm going way, way back. Was autism, because I really know nothing about it. This is wonderful, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
But the bottom line is there any correlation way, way back prior to all of the vaccinations that kids did not have the autism like they may have today? In other words, is there any fact that maybe some shots or not, can contribute to autism?
No, and that has been disproven, even though current health leaders continue to say that.
Oh, no, I'm
not saying that is politically
aware
correct,
of
and
that.
I
I
can't.
don't know if you had information prior to.
So prior to, even in the early 1900s, these traits and things were seen and they were documented, but they were seen as a psychiatric disorder.
Okay.
It wasn't recognized until much later on, like, okay, wait a minute, I think this is different. And that's when more research started to happen. And that's when more people were diagnosed. And that's when it was more socially acceptable. I think even when I was in school, you know, which my colleagues will joke wasn't that long ago, but they will say things compared to how things are at the doctor's office for my son and how it was when I was growing up is completely different. They are doing milestone checks every appointment. They want to know everything your child is doing. They want to see how they're socially interacting. And it's because they feel that early detection and early intervention, which my son did have, is only going to help him learn things that help him succeed in any way possible. And the earlier that someone, gets assistance and learns things about themselves, the more likely it is that they'll have greater success later on in life. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
First of all, Ally, thank you very much for being forthright and talking about yourself and your son.
Thank you.
Everyone covers up. Everyone.
Yeah.
And I remember as a child, okay, so you can see all the gray hair, right?
Maybe.
I had reading problems.
Mm-hmm.
And then I noticed that my son, who has like a 140-something IQ, also had reading problems.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's projected into his son,
Mm-hmm.
who is 20 and has had learning disorders or
Mm-hmm.
social disorders or autism,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And the progression of it all, my mother thought I was brilliant and I could skip kindergarten. For my son, I didn't want him to be held back.
Right.
And we fought very hard that he got extra reading classes in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And then his son has earlier developmental problems that are the social side.
Yeah.
So he's high functioning.
Mm-hmm.
He became an Eagle Scout. He dazzled me giving a speech at his raising of the thing. But the problem with all mental or physical problems in the world, not just this country, is that we all try to cover up and fake it,
Mm-hmm.
which is the beginning of your statement.
Yeah, and I think, for, what Mr. Moody said, he talked about, his past experience and in past generations, there was always a term where if you were different to mask it. That's me greatly summarizing what you just said. And that unfortunately is true in past generations. If someone was seen as different and acting different than the other kids, or, potentially wasn't performing as well as they should have been, they would try to cover it up as something else. The way that I view it, and that I'm choosing to view individuals that I know on the spectrum, as well as that may or may not be my son, is that every difference that I see in those individuals is a beautiful thing. And to play to everyone's strengths. And, if he ends up being on the spectrum, or if it's a different sensory disorder, or whatever the case is, I'm proud of him nevertheless. Mr. Moody also made a specific point that I wanted to mention, where I didn't talk about the genetic factor here. So there's more research being done, but it's found that if you have autism or someone in your family has autism, you are more likely to have autistic children, and so on and so forth. So it's actually kind of brought about things in my own family, and even, my husband will jokingly say, he's like, I never really did good in school. He's like, I'm not really good with people. And he talked about, potentially maybe, he is somewhere on the spectrum, but back when we were kids, it wasn't really treated or diagnosed like it is now. So that's just something I wanted to mention, that genetics also does play a role on, on the spectrum as well.
Yes, Ellie, you said that autism is diagnosed much more frequently now,
Yes.
even within the past few years,
Mhm.
than it was previously.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be possible that someone would come to your health center or memory care and be initially diagnosed with autism?
It can, it's more likely to happen now than it was before, but also what's even more likely is that we have people in our community even now, and they're misdiagnosed or undiagnosed, because they were just always seen as different or quirky or whatever the case. It could be a variety of factors there. Anybody else? Good, all right, well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you so much, Allie. That was wonderful, and I hope you all enjoyed. Have a nice weekend, everyone, and happy Friday. See you soon.
Happy Friday!